The old man, Seo, who is very sick, is lying down and talking about being an earthling from a civilized world. A young woman comes in, looking sad for old man Seo, telling him that his mother sent some food for him. Seo thanks the girl and tells her it's no problem, asking her to get well soon so she can make her nice soap again. The old man accepts the food and the girl leaves, walking out into the snowy landscape towards a small hut. The camera follows the young girl walking away, leaving the old man to his lonely, cold environment. The old man, Seo, coughs violently, reflecting that it has been 50 long years since he landed in this terrible world. He remembers the day they were going to the company workshop with director Kim and everyone else when suddenly a massive landslide hit them. The car they were in got completely swept away by all the falling rocks and dirt. After the accident, he woke up in this strange world, seeing a giant fox with 3 tails right in front of him. He also saw a terrifying 2-headed red snake, and then there were strange men floating in the sky. They realized they had fallen into the world from the Xianxian novels he used to read sometimes, and he saw the cover of one such book. Despite knowing the novels, he knew his co-workers would get much better lives than everyone else. However, the main character, Seo, was left behind, standing alone in the dark. The wise-looking, divine beings who came down were very impressed with his co-workers' special, almost mythical talents. These beings took each of his co-workers away into the sky, riding on a magnificent blue dragon amidst a storm. In the end, only director Kim and Seo were left in this strange land, standing in what looks like an ancient town square. Seo admits they both hoped that something special would happen to them too, but unlike the others, they had no special powers. With no clue about this new world, all they could do initially was hard manual labor, working with shovels and picks. This hard work continued until 6 months later. The narration marks a time jump. Director Kim told Seo he couldn't live like that anymore and used all his savings to buy a cheap, third-rate martial arts book sold on the streets. Just 3 months after starting, Director Kim mastered the book and became a real martial artist, easily defeating others. He then got work for the nation and learned even stronger martial arts, eventually becoming a powerful warrior and leaving for the martial world, the Jianhu. This left Seo all alone again, standing by the dirt and some simple wooden buildings, holding a shovel. He wonders if something special could happen to him too, but as time passes, nothing ever does. A bright light flashes above him as he ponders if he could have had a chance if he just had a little more power. Seo closes his eyes, showing his aged, bloody hands on a simple table, realizing that in the end, nothing special ever happened to him. After 50 years, the old man Seo is now dying from a simple cold, coughing pitifully in the snow. He weakly murmurs that he is from Earth, before coughing up blood, yet he insists he tried his absolute hardest to live. He managed to learn the language, write, make a living, buy some land, and build his own house. He started earning good money when he began making soap using lye, as soap was a new concept in this world like medieval China. However, that success stopped when thieves stole his soap recipe, and their thugs threw him out of the market. Now, waiting for death, having been totally rejected by this world, he asks, "What do you want me to do?" Even though he tried so hard, he questions what he must do, expressing pain over things always being taken away from him. He feels he no longer has the strength to keep his eyes open, wishing he had just a little more power for more opportunities. Those were his last thoughts as he died, but then suddenly he cries out in confusion. He wakes up with a jolt, realizing he is still alive, questioning how he is still breathing. He looks down and sees the modern clothes he wore back on Earth, wondering where he is. He finally understands that he did not come to this world without powers after all. He gained the power of regression. The scene flashes back to the company trip, the very first day they fell into this strange world. He recalls being in the SUV when the landslide swept them away, and he saw a bright light. A coworker asks him, "Hey, Manager Seo, you dozed off while driving on the mountainside. You almost got us all killed." Seo, the main character, realizes he had completely forgotten that event, noting he hasn't heard the title Section Chief in so long. The aggressive coworker, Section Chief John Myung-hoon, who is the nephew of a managing director, yells at him. The coworker calls Seo a son of a bitch and says that even if Seo dozed off, it was because Jeon Myung-hoon forced his work onto Seo, making him stay up late. Coworker also points out that it was Jeon Myung-hoon's job to drive, meaning they are stranded because of him. Seo begins to recall the memories from 50 years ago, realizing he was so shocked back then that he apologized to Jeon Myung-hoon. He thought he was the one at fault, and then spent the next 50 years just apologizing to people. Even when bandits took his things, or a martial artist mocked him, or officials took his possessions as taxes, he just kept apologizing. But after all those years of holding it in, he realized one thing. He thinks to himself that while he must keep his temper around people he cannot handle, he doesn't need to kneel down to someone he can actually beat. He confronts Jian Myung-hoon, saying, "Section Chief Jian, I know you're mad, but now's not the time to be pointing fingers." Jian Myung-hoon is shocked and yells, "You damn son of a bitch. Are you asking for a fight?" The main character, Seo, stands up straight and punches Jian Myung-hoon hard. The onlookers, including Director Kim, are stunned as Seo effortlessly knocks Jian Myung-hoon down. Seo reflects that in his past life, he was beaten up countless times by martial artists. He was beaten by bandits in the mountains when gathering herbs and even by officials for not paying taxes. But in that violent world, he gained something these people lack, the knowledge of how violence works. He states that if you hit someone in the eyes, their fear gets amplified, and after being beaten like that repeatedly, only 2 words come out instinctively. The defeated Jian Myung-hoon is crying, and the only words he utters are, "I'm sorry and I'm sorry." Seo concludes that while he might not have the mythical talents of those transcendent individuals or amazing martial arts to become famous, he finishes by stating that he does possess the ability to change fate. The people look concerned as manager Seo is kneeling down, groaning in pain or distress. Someone calls out to him. Another colleague asks manager Seo how he could treat his coworker that way, but manager Seo sighs and says that he was just angry and apologizes if everyone was shocked. Manager Seo thinks to himself that he won't have to see these people again until he dies, while the others look on. He then apologizes for the accident since he was the one driving, but one of the older men tells him that Section Chief Jian was being too harsh and manager Seo couldn't have done much anyway. However, the older man still insists that manager Seo overreacted and should apologize to Section Chief Jian directly, but manager Seo states he will continue seeing Director Kim. Director Kim agrees, believing that Director Kim will become a very strong martial artist once he starts learning. Person thinking this decides that supporting Director Kim in this life will surely benefit him too, meaning he needs to get on Director Kim's good side immediately. Manager Seo then directly apologizes to Section Chief Jian, admitting his reaction was not right. He follows up with a simple "I apologize," while Section Chief Jian looks furious. Section Chief Jian starts to respond angrily, but manager Seo just stares back with cold eyes. Section Chief Jian stops his angry outburst and just remains silent, looking down. This part shows the title of the chapter or series in stylized writing. The older man suggests they try to leave the woods and look for a village. Manager Seo agrees that looking for a village is the logical thing to do, but then points out something strange in the distance. They look over and someone confirms seeing something, but the narration explains that common sense has no place here. Immortals fly around trying to get immortality. The only rule in this land is that the strong eat the weak, and the people here, called Murim, fight with swords for honor and wealth. The scene flashes to what looks like a fierce sword fight with blood splattering, suggesting the nature of this Murim world. The group stands by a beautiful waterfall and pond, and the narrator explains that this forest is called the Ascension Path. A loud sound effect echoes as a vast, misty mountain range is revealed under a bright sky. The narrator explains there is no village, city, or nation anywhere nearby, making the need for shelter urgent as the sun is setting. An older man suggests setting up a shelter somewhere safe since it will be dark soon, and manager Seo agrees. Manager Seo then brings up the car, remembering it was full of supplies packed for the workshop. He sadly notes that it's a shame they won't find the car, but internally, he thinks that of course, they won't believe his story about the landslide. He decides it is better to let them search for the car rather than waste energy convincing them, and suggests they split up, one team for shelter and the other for the car. He urges them to hurry back before it gets completely dark and the scene shifts to a dark, moonlit forest. The group has managed to set up a small fire in a rocky area for shelter. As they gather around the fire, one of the women eating what appears to be roasted nuts questions how they ended up here when they were in a landslide in the car. The man next to her agrees he doesn't get it either, while others enjoy the food manager Seo found. Someone exclaims how good the food tastes like chestnuts, and manager Seo confirms he has plenty for everyone. The older man laughs, saying they are having fun despite the serious situation thanks to manager Seo's dependability, just like at the company. He recalls that manager Seo was tired from driving because he had to work late the day before as well. A woman compliments manager Seo on his diligence, but he humbly says he was just lucky. Another colleague tells him to just accept the compliment, and Manager Seo agrees to enjoy the moment. Manager Seo thinks darkly that tonight will be the last moment they can laugh like this. Suddenly, someone yells at Manager Seo to show manners to the Lord of the Forest. Manager Seo is told to get on his knees as the imposing figure appears. A creature looms over them, saying every time it sees humans, it is reminded how foolish and rude they are. The beast adds that it would usually rip off all their limbs. However, it notes that since one of them seems to know how to treat it, it will forgive them. The massive, white, red-eyed fox-like creature stands over Manager Seo, who is bowing low. A woman wakes up, clearly startled, and asks Manager Seo what is happening. She screams, seeing the monster, and others follow, yelling a monster. The giant creature then demands they show respect to the Lord of the Forest. Manager Seo shouts for them to get on their knees, while the monster explains its usual reaction to rude humans. The monster continues, saying it would normally tear off all their limbs, but because Manager Seo seems to know how to treat it, it will spare them, as Manager Seo kneels down before it. The monster then states that they must pay the price for being in its territory, demanding one person offer an arm. Manager Seo flashes back to his past life where everyone panicked and angered the fox, leading to them all being near death. He realizes that this time, the fox seems to appreciate his manners. Fox asks who will give up their arm, specifying only one arm is needed this time, unlike last time when it was all their limbs. Manager Seo, looking determined, thinks that just one arm is the sacrifice needed, and recalls seeing figures in his past life who could heal such injuries. He remembers that a lost arm will be healed by cultivators who will appear 2 days later. Furthermore, he has prepared an herb that will help reduce the pain. Manager Seo states clearly, "I will offer my arm." The other kneeling humans look shocked at this offer, while the fox praises Manager Seo's manners. The fox opens its massive jaws, preparing to take the arm, promising to make it as painless as possible in return. Manager Seo screams in agony as the beast takes his arm. Blood splatters as the arm is ripped off. The monster throws the detached arm aside, still looking menacing. Manager Seo clutches his bleeding stump, screaming in pain, reaching out for the herb. He forces himself to chew the herb, crying out that it hurts terribly. The fox comments that it thought he would taste different due to his unique scent, but he tastes the same as other humans. The monster then declares he tastes worse because of impurities in his veins, but Manager Seo notices the herb is working on the pain. Manager Seo apologizes that his offering wasn't good enough, but the fox concedes, allowing them to stay in its territory for 7 days, promising they won't die due to its divinity. The fox then leaps high into the air, causing a large shockwave as Manager Seo is thrown back by some force. He groans, and the other colleagues rush to check on him, calling his name in panic. They help him back inside the cave, with one saying, "Let's go inside," and Manager Seo promising to explain everything. Inside, Manager Seo explains that he met that fox early that morning when he left the cave, and the fox told him something. Someone exclaims, "The Murin?" And another man looks horrified, asking if they are truly in the Murin. Manager Seo laughs, saying he never imagined it, but reassures them they are safe for a week since he gave up his arm. A colleague asks what happens after the week is up, and Manager Seo says they need to give up something else, suggesting despair. He then says he is getting sleepy and needs to rest, hoping they understand. The scene shifts to a strange, purplish moon in the night sky while the group is clearly tired. One colleague confronts Section Chief Jian, asking how he can say that after Manager Seo sacrificed his arm. The person speaking the next line doesn't agree with Section Chief Jian either, thinking about who wants to give up their limbs in a week. However, they decide Manager Seo is still useful because he provided the food and shelter. They conclude they will learn as much as they can from him during this week. The speaker points out that since Manager Seo already lost an arm, he won't last long anyway. Therefore, they conclude they should have him be the sacrifice again. Manager Seo sits quietly, looking grim, blood still visible on his shirt. The man who lost his arm was thinking about the situation after he became weak, realizing someone wanted to cut off one of his limbs every week for a fox. He picked up a heavy rock, showing his strength even with only one arm. He decided that it was definitely not a good situation, even though the others seemed scared. But the protagonist thought that because of the violence he learned over 50 years, he could easily kill Jian Myung-hoon, who was just a modern man, even with just one arm. However, he paused, considering if he should actually kill him right now. He realized that acting too cruelly immediately might cause problems with Director Kim's relationship with him. Decided against killing Jian Myung-hoon for now and told him to shut up if he didn't want his ankles broken. The protagonist then said that the others were good people, and it was just a confusing time for everyone. He contrasted this with the two-headed snake, which only asked for a small amount of blood, unlike the fox that took his arm. He mentioned that this was the same snake that took Chifo's blood in the last life, and this time, Chifo offered his own arm. The next morning arrived with the bright sky after the dark night. The protagonist explained that the two-headed snake only wanted a little blood, unlike the fox that ate his arm. He recalled that Chifo had to give up his arm before, but this time, Chifo offered it willingly. The snake reacted with disgust, spitting out the blood, calling it the worst human blood it had ever tasted. It turned out the blood tasted gross because it was from a 21st century worker, full of nicotine and cholesterol. The protagonist then told Jeon Myung-hoon to come with him to pick some herbs, surprising Jeon Myung-hoon by using his full name. When Jeon Myung-hoon said he was hungry, the protagonist offered to show him the fruits and edible herbs if he followed. The protagonist then revealed his plan to give his arm to the fox next week too, saying someone needed to know how to survive if he died. Jeon Myung-hoon was thankful and excited, but the protagonist quickly warned him that the fox would not return, and that knowledge would be useless if Jeon Myung-hoon died by eating the wrong fruit. The protagonist asked if he meant natural ginseng, and Jeon Myung-hoon confirmed it, though the protagonist corrected him, saying it was a yellow bamboo root. The protagonist explained that because the ascension path was so full of energy, these roots grew to a large size, unlike the usual pinky-sized ones. He continued that while it wasn't much use for cultivators, it was a precious medicine for martial artists to increase their Kai, and it should help Director Kim. He then pointed out 2 more roots nearby, making Jeon Myung-hoon amazed and asking if it was okay to dig up so much wild ginseng. The protagonist told him to take off his shirt and put them inside, saying it was almost time and they should head back. Suddenly, there was a huge burst of light and energy, followed by someone screaming in pain. One of the group members screamed in agony, clutching his head, while the others looked shocked. Another man gasped, collapsing from exhaustion after digging non-stop for herbs. The protagonist thought this was just like how Jeon Myung-hoon used to punish him when he first joined the company, but told them they needed to finish before dusk. They found a plant with red berries, and someone exclaimed in surprise. When they dug it up, it revealed a massive ginseng-like root, making them shout, "Ginseng!" Jeon Myung-hoon was shocked by its size and asked if it was natural ginseng, while the protagonist held another pile of gathered produce. The protagonist confirmed it was like ginseng, but more accurately, a yellow bamboo root, which looked similar to the ginseng they just found. He explained the root grew this big due to the high energy of the ascension path, even though they are usually small. The protagonist explained that this root wouldn't help cultivators much, but it was extremely precious for martial artists to increase their Kai. He thought it should help Director Kim, then pointed out 2 more plants, making Jeon Myung-hoon excitedly ask if they could take all that wild ginseng. The protagonist agreed, telling him to put them in his shirt, and then looked toward the horizon where the sky was turning dark with signs of lightning, signaling it was almost time. He said they should head back now. A massive, bright explosion of energy occurred in the distance. Someone screamed in agony and collapsed onto the ground, feeling utterly defeated. One of the original group members clutched his chest in pain, and then another person cried out in surprise, looking toward the source of the disturbance. A woman among the group shouted in confusion, asking what was wrong with them, as 3 powerful figures suddenly appeared above them. One of the powerful figures, dressed in yellow, told someone named Byako to back off because these 3 individuals belonged to him, hinting at a conflict. The golden figure insulted another powerful figure, Hyabrak, while the surviving modern men looked up in terror, one kneeling in fear. They asked who these mysterious people were, and one of the newcomers stated that only 3 among the group have spiritual roots. This expert clarified that the rest of the modern people were just normal mortals. Then the golden figure began to charge up a powerful yellow energy ball. The energy intensified around the golden figure, suggesting immense power. The golden figure unleashed a powerful blast of energy that hit one of the modern men, making him scream and causing another man to shout Section Chief Jeon's name. The golden figure declared it was incredible, stating the hit man had the body of heavenly golden thunder, and then the female figure next to him said it was her turn, preparing to play her stringed instrument. The woman in the modern group gasped in horror as the terrifying music began. A dark, ominous red energy started to manifest powerfully. The black and purple energy swept over the modern people, who were thrown back by the force. The musician woman was ecstatic, recognizing the technique as the ghostly yin transforming immortal root, amazed that such a thing actually existed. Then, the third powerful figure landed with a heavy thud, showing off their armored boots. This warrior, with a beard, praised the person he grabbed for having a unique holy body, while the captured man cried out in confusion. This warrior then declared he would take all three of them as disciples of the Azure Heaven Creation sect. He proclaimed that all three had the talent to change the entire world and asked how that sounded, while one of the modern men mumbled, I can't." The man struggled to breathe under the immense force, wondering what this power was, feeling like he would die if he refused. The woman in black told the other powerful group to join the Black Ghost Valley instead, claiming they have every cultivation method, while the warrior seemed annoyed by the interruption. The Black Ghost Valley representative offered them immortality and the power to overturn the heavens, along with fame and wealth within 100 years. The warrior from the Azure Heaven Creation sect demanded to know what they were saying, insisting his sect was better suited, while at the bottom, the modern people were left helpless or unconscious. The modern men, recovering slightly, pleaded with the powerful figures to get them out of the forest before they all died. The golden figure poured some liquid from a jade vessel, saying mortals worry too much, and then channeled a bright blue energy around himself. He blasted the energy towards one of the modern men, who screamed as he was hit. The warrior carried one unconscious man, and the golden figure noted the wound on the protagonist, realizing the arm was offered willingly. He acknowledged that even though the protagonist was a mere mortal, he had guts, while the protagonist looked up, thanking them with a blue energy aura around his hand. The powerful figures mentioned they captured all the beasts and monsters on the way there to ensure safety for the next 10 years. As they flew away, one of the surviving men desperately cried out for them to wait, saying they didn't even know how to leave the forest. He shouted for Section Chief Jian, Chief O, and Deputy Manager Kang, realizing the same thing happened 50 years ago. The protagonist recalled that no matter how hard they shouted, the powerful figures ignored them like insects and continued on their way. However, he noted that at least the protagonist's arm was healed by someone. Looking up at the strange lights in the night sky, one man panted, asking what they were supposed to do in a forest like this. He wondered what all those lights in the sky were and if there was something important in that direction. The next day, the weather turned stormy with heavy rain and lightning. A woman coughed weakly while lying on the ground in the cave. Deputy Manager Co urgently spoke to Deputy Manager O, saying Chief O was in terrible condition and asking if there was an herb they could use. The protagonist told them to wait a little longer, hoping someone might appear and heal her. The others looked into the cave entrance where the protagonist stood, seemingly waiting. A shadowy figure approached the group. The figure spoke of mortals on the ascension path suffering like ants among the competition between dragons. One of the modern men gasped in shock and fear at the imposing figure. The man shouted, asking who the mysterious figure was. The figure, whose face was shadowed, revealed that he was the Sea Dragon King. Someone wondered about controlling the storm, as it suddenly appeared from nowhere. A mysterious figure arrived looking for the cause, standing over some people lying on the ground. The figure observed that the woman who caused the storm was an ordinary person with no sign of cultivation, which was very strange. Furthermore, the powerful magic was not even being controlled by her consciously, making the whole situation peculiar. The main character replied that they were the confused ones, as they have been in this strange place for a while, and powerful people keep showing up. The mysterious figure laughed heartily, repeating what the main character said about powerful cultivators taking away companions as if it was prearranged. The figure confirmed the understanding that among their colleagues, some had special potential, and then strong cultivators took them away. The figure then asked if it was also convenient that he, the figure, appeared right in front of that woman. The figure simply answered yes to the main character's summary of the bizarre events. The figure, with glowing green eyes, then asked the mortal if he knew where they actually were. A grand, beautiful palace structure appeared high above the clouds, suggesting a divine location. The figure explained that this place is called the Ascension Path, a path leading upwards. It was mentioned that this path is a key gateway leading to the upper realm. In a few months, a dimensional rift called the Ascension Gate is going to open right near this spot. This event only happens every 1,000 years, and many high-level cultivators and spiritual beings are gathering to ascend. Because of this, the figure pointed out that it is very likely cultivators like himself would appear around them. The main character responded with "I see," while his terrified colleague looked on. The colleague was worried because the others claimed they were taking his colleagues to join their sects, not ascend. He wondered how they could join the ascent if they were joining sects. The cultivator explained that it might be hard for mortals to understand the concept. He explained there is a technique among cultivators to shrink big things and store them inside magical tools. The figure showed a small white flask, explaining that they have likely stored their entire sects inside items like this. Their main plan is to ascend to the upper realm along with their whole sect when the Ascension Gate opens. The figure then proudly announced that he himself had packed one of the undersea castles of his Sea Dragon clan inside that very item. He revealed that inside that small item, 1,800 sea dragons were lying dormant, showcasing his power. The main characters were stunned silent, but the first cultivator found the situation peculiar and intriguing, focusing on the unconscious woman. He thought that if the woman joined the Sea Dragon clan, she could become something extraordinary, suggesting he would give her his blood and accept her as kin. One of the mortals tried to stop the cultivator from taking the woman, crying out "Miss O." The other mortal, likely the one who was pushed, cried out in pain as he hit the ground hard. The powerful cultivator ignored their pleas and was focused on his plan. He declared that giving her his blood and accepting her as his kin would be best for everyone involved. The cultivator carried the unconscious woman away, ignoring the distressed cries of the men left behind. Before leaving, the cultivator offered one last piece of advice. He warned them never to casually ask high-level cultivators questions, as he was only answering because he was generous. The warning was followed by a scene of the two mortals struggling under immense pressure, gasping for air. The cultivator continued that most other cultivators would have killed them just for asking a question. He then left, with the powerful energy of his departure shaking the area, leaving the mortals in distress. Suddenly, a huge storm full of lightning erupted in the sky. A massive blue dragon appeared within the storm, making a powerful display. This crop is mostly white space, indicating a transition or pause after the dragon's appearance. The scene shifted back to the original group in a bright, sunny forest, where the female colleague stated that everyone had been kidnapped. She wondered about the sudden avalanche and the fact that immortals and dragons abducted their colleagues. She then started laughing hysterically, perhaps from shock, while the two male colleagues stood by her. She then urgently asked manager Seo to stay with her, saying she could not survive alone in the forest if he was also taken. The main character, looking determined, stated that, unfortunately, their time was up. The woman started crying, sensing something approaching and crying out in distress. The main character sternly told her that their time was up, as something was coming. The woman cried out in alarm, feeling something was coming, showing fear and confusion. She was now kneeling and crying, as the strange energy intensified around them. The other male colleague yelled in surprise at Director Kim, wondering what was wrong with him as birds scattered from the sky. Someone whispered that it's he, referring to the approaching event. The colleague with the orange jacket looked confused, asking them. As powerful energy surged, two new cultivators appeared, one riding a mechanical-looking beast, and they were shocked to see mortals in this area. One of the newcomers realized that since the Ascension Gate was about to open, the unstable space must have swept the mortals in with a spatial storm, and he called himself a genius for figuring it out. An old woman, leaning on a staff, then asked who was the one who emitted that mass of consciousness earlier. She admitted that the presence was so strong she thought a sage from the upper realm had descended. She then asked if it was that girl, while the colleague who was just taken whispered that manager Kim was their colleague and asked who the old woman was. The orange-jacketed man and the woman who was kneeling tried to object as the old woman made a move. Suddenly, the director Kim and the orange-jacketed man were flung violently upwards. The main character yelled out for Director Kim as he saw them being thrown away. He watched as both his colleagues were slammed into the ground with incredible force. The orange-jacketed man, who was hit hard, thanked Deputy Manager Seo for saving him. The kneeling woman was horrified as she saw the severe wounds on the back of Director Kim's shirt. Director Kim weakly said he was okay, and then the old woman offered to take the other woman in. The old woman told the woman she didn't have a spiritual root, but she could awaken it with her power, musing about what would happen if that strange consciousness evolved. The crying woman pleaded, calling out for Director Kim and Deputy Manager, while the old woman questioned her attachment to worldly ties. The old woman pressed her, asking if she was still clinging to her attachments even after she offered to take her in. As the woman pleaded for her colleagues, the old woman decided to forcefully sever those ties. The old woman announced that since she wouldn't let go, she would sever their worldly ties herself, and the woman begged her to spare them. The old woman agreed to spare them only if the woman agreed to forget all her worldly ties, and the woman reluctantly agreed. She understood the condition, but the old woman immediately decided to scatter them randomly through a dimensional rift, saying she wouldn't leave them nearby. The old woman intensified her power, stating she didn't even know where they would land. A massive, fiery portal ripped open in the air. The two men were pulled into a dark vortex, shouting in panic, while the main character regretted not grabbing some herbs first. The main character desperately reached out, still trying to hold on as he and the other man were sucked into the dark rift. The woman who was supposed to be taken watched in horror as her colleagues disappeared, crying out for Yunhun. The world went completely dark for a moment. Some sounds of impact or shifting space were heard in the darkness. Thoughts flashed through the protagonist's mind about fine silks in Yanduo and new scriptures from Shengsai. The protagonist woke up in a stone room, seeing his two colleagues, Director Kim and the other man, lying unconscious nearby. He slowly woke up, looking around in confusion. He looked around and asked in shock, "Where is this?" Seeing people in old-fashioned clothing outside, he realized that in his previous life, he hadn't fallen into a place like this, as people walked around displaying silks and looking at him strangely. He understood that the immortal was telling the truth about the random landing spot, but this place felt strangely familiar. Shielding his eyes from the bright sun, he recognized the surroundings. A tall, multi-tiered pagoda dominated the skyline. He finally confirmed that he had landed in the capital of Yangguo, Xiaqian City. The manager was feeling overwhelmed by everything happening around him, wishing it was all just a bad dream while looking at the busy streets outside. He and the protagonist were the only ones left, and while the manager felt some relief about escaping the monsters, the protagonist felt differently. The manager sighed, thinking they were lucky to survive the monsters that took others away. The protagonist, however, didn't share that relief, thinking about his past life where he was just a weak herb gatherer. Even though he regressed, he remembered being powerless, but now, they couldn't stay in that dirty alleyway any longer. He suggested they should leave the alley, and the manager agreed, wondering what the people nearby were saying as it sounded like Chinese. Looking at the city view, it was clear they were in a new, big place, and as they walked out, they noticed people whispering. The protagonist asked why people were staring, and the manager told him they thought their clothes looked funny. The protagonist, trying to sound confident, told the manager not to worry because he knew a bit of Chinese. The manager was relieved and happy, but the protagonist then admitted he lied and that the language wasn't actually Chinese, even though it used the same characters. He explained that the spoken language sounded completely different, recalling how he suffered insults from beggars for 2 months just to learn the basics of that language in his past life. Now, that painful learning was no longer needed, and the protagonist suggested they get new clothes. The manager worried about how they would pay, feeling no one would accept their money for such fine things, especially after they found some valuable herbs. The merchant excitedly held up the yellow bamboo roots, saying they were 800 years old and worth about 15 silver ingots. Hearing the big number, the protagonist was shocked, realizing he had never possessed that much money in his previous life. But the protagonist quickly told the merchant to hurry up with the transaction. The merchant happily agreed to finish quickly, and then the scene shifted to a grand house where the manager was surprised to see where they were going to live. The protagonist confirmed it was their new home and promised to teach the manager the language of this new place starting that day. The manager laughed happily, thanking manager CEO, but the protagonist looked troubled, admitting he made it seem easy. He revealed that after bribing people for identity plaques and buying the land and house, they only had 1 silver ingot left, explaining that everything in the capital was super expensive. Both men realized they needed a way to earn money since their resources were almost gone, and the manager suggested using the silver they got from selling the rest of the herbs to start a business. The protagonist agreed, thinking that with the money from the herbs and the manager's past experience as a company director, they could make a living. But the protagonist thought that wasn't enough, and since he had regressed, he decided he should aim for something much bigger. He started thinking about director Kim Yun-hoon, who was a martial genius in his previous life. Kim Yun-hoon had learned martial arts from cheap street books and became a master in months, later becoming one of the most powerful martial artists in the genre. Once he learned advanced techniques. The protagonist wondered what would happen if Kim Yun-hoon learned the advanced martial arts from the very beginning. He felt he could potentially move up the appearance of the greatest swordsman in the genre, who by at least 30 years. He decided then and there that he would benefit as much as possible by working for him when that time came. The manager was confused, asking about martial arts, since they don't teach outsiders the techniques of the sex. The protagonist, smiling knowingly, said that, as a well-known Murim novel nerd, he knew the manager would be interested in this. He explained that in this city, there were 7 famous sects. He detailed that the demon-slaying sect, self-binding temple, suppressing bird house, and 7 mysteries sect were on the orthodox side of the Jianghu. On the other hand, the Wolf Fang Gang, Dark Knight Association, and Dragon Fighting Stronghold were considered unorthodox, and people called them the Four Stars and the Three Demons. The protagonist went on to describe the specialties of some sects. The demon-slaying sect focused on sword and blade techniques. The Self-Binding Temple was a Buddhist sect, and the Suppressing Bird House was like the House sect, treating information as very important. The Seven Mysteries sect had a long history and learned all kinds of martial arts. Regarding the Three Demons, there wasn't much known, only that they were good at stealth techniques and sorcery, and they did a lot of illegal stuff. The manager asked which sect the protagonist liked best, and he immediately answered the demon-slaying sect. He felt it was fitting because a martial artist should wield a sword, and a man should learn blade techniques, just like the man who was called the best swordsman in his past life. Then the manager asked how the protagonist knew all this detailed information. The protagonist just laughed and said he was eavesdropping on some martial artists talking earlier, and then 3 months passed. They arrived at the imposing gates of the demon-slaying sect, where a stern-looking guard stopped them, asking their business. The protagonist smoothly introduced the manager as his older brother and explained they heard how famous the sect was and wanted to learn martial arts. The guard looked them over, noticing their money, but then said he was sorry because learning martial arts at the manager's age would be too difficult. The protagonist smiled broadly and asked if they could at least speak to someone higher up, mentioning even simple self-defense would be fine. The scene shifted to a brighter exterior view of the massive sect grounds, showing its grand courtyard. Back inside, the elder guard asked if they seriously wanted to learn martial arts for self-defense. The protagonist confirmed this, saying he wanted the best, and then presented a box filled with silver ingots, saying, "Please." The elder guard cleared his throat and agreed that the manager could join as an external disciple, but he warned they wouldn't give special treatment for donations and would only accept one of them. The manager got angry, exclaiming that all that money was only worth one yellow bamboo root and questioned if they were being ripped off. However, the protagonist calmly interrupted, saying, "I thank you," and declared that his brother would be the one learning. The guard, collecting the money box, told them to come out later to the area where all the external disciples gathered. The manager looked worried about his name, Seo Yoon-hyun, asking what the use was if only he could learn martial arts. He complained that he would have chosen a different group if he knew it would be so expensive for just one person. The protagonist laughed it off, telling the manager not to worry because he was never good at sports anyway. He assured the manager that he would set up a business with the remaining money and support him, telling the manager to just focus on learning martial arts. The manager paused, worried because he was old and unsure if he could really keep up. The protagonist encouraged him, saying, "Believe in yourself. I'm sure you can do it," and the manager quietly said, "Thanks." After 7 months passed, the scene showed the large complex of the sect. A title card announced, 7 months later, showing the training grounds of the sect. The text specified that at a competition held within the sect, a shocking event had occurred. A high-ranking martial artist looked stunned, saying, "What?" while clenching his fist. He seemed furious, his hands gripping the armrest, as he realized something unbelievable. The crowd looked on in shock as someone stood victorious over defeated disciples. The shocked elder exclaimed, "Defeated all my beloved disciples?" referring to some outsider who appeared from nowhere. In the world of martial arts, becoming truly skilled means completely understanding the art and making it part of the body. A warrior who just understands a third-rate martial art can become second-rate by truly accepting it. But to get past that point, they need much more understanding, time, and hard work. However, some people are so talented they jump through many stages at once, laughing at the usual understanding levels. Meanwhile, at the demon-slaying sect, a big group in Seokyeong City, something shocking is happening. An outsider has come and is beating up the direct disciples of this important sect. In just 7 months, Director Kim became a first-rate warrior, totally mastering the demon-slaying sect's absolute dragon saber technique. To reach first-rate in only half a year of training is unheard of, as this level usually takes the combined effort of many skilled martial artists. What made it worse was that he was an outsider learning in their sect, which made others feel like their whole tradition had bowed down to this one man. Because of this chaos, which started within 7 months, Director Kim was put under house arrest, suspected of being a spy from another sect. But the other person in the room wonders why he was also suspected when he doesn't even know martial arts, mentioning he was just arrested at the market. Director Kim just laughs it off, saying he is not worried about being suspected as a spy, unlike what happens in martial arts novels where spies get their Kai core destroyed. But for some reason, director Kim feels he is about to hit the next wall, and crossing it will take him to the next stage. The other person is shocked that director Kim is already nearing the next stage, even though he only became a first-rate martial artist recently. This chapter introduces the setting and the intense situation, showing the title page of the story. The level after first rate is called Martial Peak, which is what most sect leaders and elders of great sects reach. In the whole nation of Yanhuo, only about 1,000 people are at that Martial Peak level. The martial arts world generally does not talk about any stage beyond Martial Peak, making it seem like the final level one can reach through martial arts. The narrator realizes his previous assumptions were wrong because director Kim is progressing too fast. At this speed, the birth of the greatest swordsman in the world seems likely to happen much faster, maybe in 40 years, not 30. 7 days pass, and we see director Kim meditating, surrounded by 3 blue, flower-like manifestations of Kai. He exhales with a long sound, signaling a breakthrough. The narrator recognizes this as the flower of Kai, something only peak martial artists see, and specifically, 3 flowers gathering at the summit. Director Kim declares that he has crossed the barrier and is no longer afraid of the demon-slaying sect leader. The other man, Yoon-hyun, is amazed and admits he is also impressed by director Kim's talent. Director Kim says he never knew he had such talent and jokes that maybe this is why he always loved reading martial arts novels as a kid. Suddenly, people rush in with an order from the sect leader to destroy the Kai core of the spy who stole their martial arts. They claim they heard Yoon-hyun and director Kim speaking in some secret language, ordering everyone to restrain them. The men attacking are high-level fighters, and one recognizes they are facing a peak-level martial artist and yells to inform the sect leader. In the ensuing chaos, director Kim tells Yoon-hyun he plans to leave and train with other sects. Yoon-hyun agrees to go with him, suggesting the acclaimed unorthodox sect, the Dragon Fighting Stronghold. Director Kim agrees, telling him to meet him there, and states he will end the pursuit by the demon-slaying sect's elders and leader. They arrive at the Dragon Fighting Stronghold, and director Kim greets Yoon-hyun, who admits the director is just too fast. Yoon-hyun thinks about how director Kim used to criticize his violence, noting that this harsh world changes people, even if it was just for survival. He wishes they could return to everyday life on Earth, not this martial arts world, and wishes he could regress back to Earth. After being betrayed by the demon-slaying sect, director Kim took over the dragon-fighting stronghold. 2 years later, he toured Yanhuo, defeating various sects, and in the 3rd year, he destroyed the emblems of every sect. Director Kim became known as the greatest martial artist under the heavens and used his fame to unite the sects into the martial alliance. 7 years later, director Kim and the narrator, Yoon-hyun, were as close as brothers despite the age difference. Director Kim created a martial art just for Yoon-hyun, calling it the Severing Mountain Sword, hoping Yoon-hyun would inherit the will to cut down mountains. He also mentions the Dragon Vein Kai method created alongside it, calling them true first-rate martial arts, unlike low-rate ones. The narrator then recalls that if there was a problem, it was with his own talent, which was absolutely terrible. Even with the best martial artist under the heavens creating a custom technique and teaching him one-on-one, he barely reached 3rd rate after a whole year. He accepts it, thinking he might have talent in medicine instead, concluding that people are talented in different areas. One day after a decade passed, he witnessed something legendary. He saw 5 energies converge to the origin, realizing this was a legendary level of power. Director Kim, looking strong and smiling, asks Yoon-hyun why he looks so surprised. One person joked that the other looked younger, and the younger-looking one replied happily that he felt full of life and could do anything. The other person laughed and said the world would be shocked by his skeletal restructuring, then mentioned he needed to find a successor for the martial alliance soon. He wondered if anyone was fit to take over, stating that the leader must have some skill in martial arts. However, he lamented that not a single person understood martial arts properly, calling the other person the extraordinary one present. He declared there was no genius in the world like him, but still felt there was nobody worthy to take over, and then asked what was happening outside. Looking out, he saw many people practicing martial arts outside, but still felt there was simply nobody worthy of leading. This is the title card for the chapter, showing the name of the tale. After a big gap of 15 years, the scene shifts to a grand building, likely the Martial Alliance headquarters. The narrator mentions that it has been 35 years since he started his life on the ascension path. He noted that he was already in his mid-60s now and wondered what Yoon-hyun was doing. He recalled that just 1 year after Yoon-hyun's skeletal restructuring, Yoon-hyun passed the position of alliance leader to his successor and left. The narrator wished he could have retired with Yun-hoon, but to keep order in the alliance, he had to stay as the strategist until now. Yun-hoon said he wanted to travel around Yongguo more, and perhaps that is why he didn't even show up at the narrator's retirement ceremony. Feeling a bit lonely, the man stood outside his new, large manor. He sighed, saying it was too quiet since he bought this manor with his retirement funds, but it was too big to live in alone. Suddenly, a sound made him alert, and he yelled, asking who was there. A familiar figure appeared, and the old man recognized him, exclaiming it was Yun-hoon Hyan. The old man asked in shock what happened to him and why he missed his retirement ceremony. Yun-hoon then collapsed onto the ground, making the old man rush over, still asking what happened. Yun-hoon, lying down, told the old man, Yoon-hyun, that he truly believed he was blessed with a gift in martial arts. Yoon-hyun agreed, saying if Yun-hoon wasn't a genius, then who would be? Yun-hoon confirmed he was a genius in martial arts, claiming nobody in Yongguo or any ordinary mortal could match his talent. Yoon-hyun chuckled, asking how Yun-hoon could call himself an ordinary mortal when everyone knew he was the strongest man under the heavens, then mentioned he fought a cultivator. Yun-hoon brought up the flying monsters from 35 years ago, the ones who kidnapped their coworkers. He reminded Yoon-hyun of those flying monsters, who were cultivators. Yoon-hyun confirmed they were cultivators. He explained that cultivators hide in the shadows of Yongguo's royal palace, manipulating the entire country without revealing themselves easily. As the alliance's influence grew in Yongguo, the cultivators started directing their influence onto them. Yun-hoon Hyang had issues with this, but to avoid opposing the nation itself, he had to follow orders to protect the martial alliance. Because of this, Yun-hoon gave up his position as alliance leader. He wanted to duel the cultivators as an individual by scouring Yongguo alone. Yun-hoon said those cultivators were hard to find, and even when he found one, they would ignore him. They would say mortals weren't worth fighting, using illusions or just flying away, making it hard to even engage them. However, 5 years ago, he finally managed to duel a cultivator, and Yoon-hyun eagerly asked if he won. Yun-hoon simply replied that he did win, to which Yoon-hyun sighed, saying if he had done that while he was alliance leader, it would have caused a lot of trouble. Yun-hoon then seemed distressed, clutching his head. He explained that he put his life on the line to fight a cultivator who reached the Kai building stage, and only managed to make a small cut on his fingertip. Yoon-hyun recalled that the cultivator said even a single scratch would count as his loss, meaning Yun-hoon technically won. Yun-hoon asked if that cultivator was like one of the 10 strongest cultivators, but the other firmly said no. The cultivator told him that Kai building was the second lowest stage in the world of cultivation. Yoon-hyun was shocked, exclaiming this was nonsense. Yun-hoon reflected that in both his previous and current life, he knew cultivators were ridiculous beings. But he acknowledged that Yun-hoon Hyan's martial arts had undoubtedly reached the sky, allowing him to walk on air and use techniques while suspended. Yun-hoon's powerful strikes were shown demolishing parts of a building structure. He said Yun-hoon Hyan was capable of cutting through entire buildings or steel like tofu, but such a genius barely scratched a bottom-rate cultivator. Yun-hoon then revealed that today, he managed to cut off the cultivator's hand, but admitted he was a frog in the well. Yoon-hyun realized they truly cannot face the cultivators, calling them living natural disasters. Yun-hoon stated that even so, today he managed to cut off the hand. He showed his hand indicating the fight. Yoon-hyun asked if his martial arts managed to surpass him, but Yun-hoon simply said no, explaining the cultivator put a paper talisman on himself and his hand grew back. Yun-hoon concluded that this was the limit to his martial arts and said he was there to say goodbye, mentioning the cultivator held his willpower in high regard and offered him a place in his cultivation sect. Yun-hoon said he would probably start from the bottom there. Yoon-hyun expressed surprise, asking if it wasn't impossible to become a cultivator without a spiritual root. He explained that for a regular mortal, the stage of 5 energies converging to the origin is equivalent to the 5-element spiritual root that cultivators are naturally born with. To gain that basic quality cultivators are born with, mortals like them must use their entire lives. Yun-hoon, enveloped in dark energy, declared he must aim for a higher stage now and said he will go. He handed Yoon-hyun a scroll, saying it was his last gift. Yun-hoon smiled and told Yoon-hyun to stay safe, then began to disappear in a burst of energy. Yoon-hyun called out for Yun-hoon Hyang in alarm as the space where he stood started warping. Yoon-hyun looked at the scroll, which was titled Record of Transcending Cultivation and Exhausting Martial Arts. It was a record of attempting to use martial arts to surpass cultivation, and Yoon-hyun cried out, asking where Yun-hoon was going without him. The narration notes that time passed after that farewell. Snowflakes fell as time moved forward. The scene shifts to a very old man who seems to be dying, noting how cruel fate is. It has been 50 years since he came to this world, and he was lying there dying from a common cold, just like in his previous life. He reflects that no matter how hard a human tries, they cannot escape fate. He thought that in the end, the only change was his house and bed, as he ultimately died on the same day. The old man thought he lived his life to its limits because he didn't want to feel the same regret as his past life, admitting he was so busy he hadn't even thought of marriage. Thanks to that focus, he managed to unite the unusual martial sects and experience fame and wealth. Despite his achievements, he felt a deep emptiness and wondered if he and Yunhoon Hyan could have reached the sky if they had struggled harder. His body trembled with this feeling of powerlessness as he faced his end. The main character wakes up, realizing he is back in the same forest, on the same path they call the Ascension Path. His body feels full of energy, and he understands that this regression, this going back in time, is not a one-time thing. Suddenly, someone shouts at him, calling him Deputy Manager CO. Another person yells out, calling him a motherfucker, as the scene shows a physical confrontation starting. He managed to dodge the attack, surprising the person who tried to hit him. The character wonders why he regressed again, feeling a new body full of energy, which seems like a good fresh start. However, he quickly starts thinking about the 50 years of things he had built up in his past life. That past life, which included the grand building he sees in his memory, is gone, making him question if this regression is truly a good thing. The angry colleague confronts him, shouting about almost getting everyone killed and then dodging his attack. The protagonist thinks about this regression and questions if it is really a good thing for him. He decides that it is not a good thing. Instead, he feels this is a curse that takes away the meaning of his life. He reasons that while a few regressions might seem like a blessing, if it goes on forever, he will be stuck in fate's wheel. He imagines being trapped, forced to live through life's suffering over and over until the end of time. Even worse, he cannot meet the people he knew in his previous life again. The people in front of him now only look like the people he knew before, but they are not the same. The person he considered his own brother, Yunhoon, no longer exists in this world as he remembered him. As this realization hits, another colleague tries to calm down Section Chief Jian, who is very angry. The calm person tells Jian to settle down, asking what good anger will do in this situation. Jian yells back, calling the calm person shameless and reminding him that he was supposed to be on driving duty today. Calm person explains that he warned them before they forced him to drive, mentioning he couldn't sleep because of the work they offloaded onto him. He asks how anyone could have dodged an avalanche on a narrow road under those circumstances. The calm person then tells everyone to stop fighting and start thinking about what they need to do next. Addressing Young-hoo, or Director Kim, he says he will search for a safe place to stay before sunset. He tells everyone else to look for the car or find a way out of the forest while he is gone. He promises to light a fire so they should come over to it when the sun sets. He wonders if there is any point in bonding with these people since he will end up alone in the end anyway. As night falls and a bright moon appears, he reflects on the unending regression of time to come. Everyone is sleeping around a small fire in a cave, resting after the day's trauma. Lying down, he fears the infinite regression and decides that this ability must be taken away. He wonders if the regression ability would stop if he somehow managed to return to Earth, since he always regresses back to this moment on the Ascension Path. But then the question arises, how does he even get home? He recalls hearing that when the Ascension Gate opens, nearby spaces become unstable, which could catch ordinary humans in spatial storms. He realizes that the Ascension Gate must be connected to how they fell into this world, suggesting they might use it to return. First, however, he understands he must grow stronger because as an ordinary mortal he cannot achieve anything significant. He resolves that he needs to become a cultivator, just like Yunhoon, and start cultivating. Once he gains a longer lifespan by becoming a cultivator, he will have enough time to properly research the Ascension Gate. He declares his intention to become a cultivator and go to the Ascension Gate. He looks up at the night sky, firm in his new goal. He is determined to become a cultivator and reach the Ascension Gate. The next day, he is seen in the forest, preparing for cultivation. He is shown consuming some yellow bamboo roots after crushing some dirt. He feels the strong Kai shaking in his core now, realizing that eating these roots alone was useless in his past life because he didn't know any heart methods. But now, he can use the dragon vein Kai method that Yunhoon made for him. He concentrates, feeling the Kai flow, believing he can break through his blocked Kai passageways. He finishes his immediate cultivation session, breathing out, realizing it is not easy to cleanse a body full of fast food and stress preservatives. He looks out at the bright morning sky over the forest. He picks up a sturdy wooden stick and a sharp rock on the ground. He sharpens the stick using the rock, preparing to practice. He is confident that the simple preparation should be enough for what he plans to do. He starts practicing with the stick, showing powerful, practiced movements. He focuses intently, executing a powerful technique with the wooden stick. He reflects that in his past life, he was only an average, second-rate martial artist, and his skills have dulled because he stopped practicing near the end of his life. But he remembers everything in his head, so improving his skills is just a matter of time. He demonstrates a powerful move called the Severing Mountain Sword with a wooden stick. With a massive impact, the wooden stick cleanly slices through the thick tree trunk. He finishes his powerful strike, and then someone shouts his name, Deputy Manager Seo. The man who shouted is shocked, asking what that just was and how he slashed a tree with a wooden stick. The man is utterly stunned by the strength displayed. The protagonist looks at the stick and then at the person who was once Sim Hoon, realizing this person is now the one who will teach him to be a cultivator. He smiles and asks Director Kim if he wants to try learning this technique. Director Kim is surprised and happy, exclaiming, "Oh!" Director Kim happily asks if he really can learn it. Before the main character can respond further, a terrifying, savage sound fills the air, along with aggressive claw marks appearing. A massive wolf-like creature roars, calling the humans filthy. The white, red-eyed beast yells at them, telling them they dare to play around. The protagonist stands ready, holding his stick, while the panicked Director Kim stutters, "Yeah." He realizes with dread, in front of the master of this forest, "I forgot about him." NCO Yoonhyun arrives at the impressive Hall of Eight Respects, a place known for its structured martial arts training. And a lady greets him and tells him that the sect leader is waiting for him inside. NCO Yoonhyun follows the lady through the grand, wooden hallway of the sect building. And they arrive at an open area where people are gathered, and the challenger walks onto the fighting stage. And the perspective shows CO Yoonhyun looking up toward the main gathering area where the sect leader stands. And the sect leader, a man with a distinct goatee, watches with interest as CO Yoonhyun approaches. And the sect leader compliments CO Yoonhyun, surprised that such a powerful martial artist is so young. And CO Yoonhyun formally greets the sect leader, acknowledging his strong energy. And the sect leader agrees that CO Yoonhyun's energy is also strong, and CO Yoonhyun asks for some teaching. And the sect leader agrees to make the first move, showing off his weapon, which looks like a chain set of clubs or nunchucks. And this weapon moves incredibly fast as the sect leader prepares his attack. And CO Yoonhyun stands ready with his sword as the sect leader initiates the first move with his chain weapon. And the sect leader swings his weapon with powerful force towards CO Yoonhyun. And the impact of the move creates a strong visual shockwave in the air. And the chain weapon glows with blue energy as it spins rapidly. And CO Yoonhyun stands his ground, ready to meet the attack head-on with his sword. And close up on CO Yoonhyun's eyes as the sharp point of the chain weapon lunges towards him. And CO Yoonhyun quickly dodges the intense attack by leaning back sharply. And he manages to deflect the spinning chain right near his body with a quick clash. And the onlookers in the stands are shocked, realizing CO Yoonhyun just blocked the sect leader's special chain weapon with just his sword. And the sect leader notes CO Yoonhyun's reaction time, saying he has reached the level of becoming one with his sword and is at the late stage of first rate. And he further states that CO Yoonhyun has perfectly merged his martial arts with his weapon and admits he learned from that single move. And the sect leader smiles, calling Seo Yoonhyun a true genius for achieving this level so young. And Seo Yoonhyun smirks, thinking that being called a genius isn't really a compliment to him. And he thinks that even though his current prowess seems impressive, reaching this level in his late 20s took others decades. And Seo Yoonhyun thanks the sect leader for praising his skills, which he still considers not sufficient yet. And he states he is just one of the many talentless fools in the world, as he was never gifted talent from the heavens. And however, despite his lack of natural talent, he developed martial prowess equal to geniuses through regression, which he sees as an opportunity. And Seo Yoonhyun decides to continue acting like a genius for now and announces he will start using sword energy from this point forward. And the sect leader welcomes the change, stating he will also take things seriously now. And Seo Yoonhyun unleashes the first form of his mountain-severing sword art, called Transcending Peaks. And the sect leader is immediately put on the defensive against the powerful sword technique. And Seo Yoonhyun follows up quickly with the second form, Entering Mountain. And then he executes the third form, Ascending Vein, pushing the attack aggressively. And the sect leader tries to block the incoming force from the chained weapon. And the sect leader, now glowing with blue energy and looking fierce, tries to hold the line. And Seo Yoonhyun's sword moves through the air with incredible speed, overwhelming the opponent. And the sect leader yells out, shocked by the monstrous sword art he cannot block. And he realizes he can't break through the sword's defense and grunts in pain as he is hit. And Seo Yoonhyun transitions immediately into the seventh form of the Severing Mountain sword, Deep Mountain. And the speed of the seventh form is immense, indicated by the intense visual effects. And the sect leader is struck, blood trickling from his ear, showing the power of the move. And the audience is utterly stunned, exclaiming that it's impossible the sect leader is losing. And they observe that Seo Yoonhyun's sword gets faster with every new form he uses in the attack sequence. And as Seo Yoonhyun uses the 11th form, Cliff Edge, an observer notes it's not just speed that is increasing. And they realize the sword is gaining a ridiculous amount of destructive force. And the clash of techniques forces the sect leader back, causing him visible strain. And Seo Yoonhyun decides to finish the match right then. And he prepares the final, ultimate technique, the 12th form, 7 Lights Emerging Peak. And the sect leader looks up in distress as the final, overwhelming attack descends. And Seo Yoonhyun unleashes a massive, bright sword energy blast, a blinding display of power. And with a shattering sound, the sect leader's chained weapon breaks apart under the force. And many disciples watching look on in utter shock at the sheer power displayed. And the sect leader admits defeat with a groan, the fight over. And Seo Yoonhyun bows respectfully to his opponent, concluding the duel properly. And he steps off the broken fighting circle, showing there was no ill effect from the fight on him. And looking up at the main building, he reflects on the Hall of 8 Respects being an orthodox sect with strict morals. And as he walks away, many members of the sect, now gathered outside, whisper amongst themselves about the victor. And Seo Yoonhyun realizes he should visit the unorthodox sects next, since this one had no lasting negative effects. And he thinks that with this tour of duels, he will reach the martial peak in this life. And after this victory, the narrative shifts to summarize his recent travels. And he had toured 4 more medium-sized sects in Seokyeom City. And in those duels, he lost to the Yunryu sect and the Hweyeon sect. But he was victorious against the Giju sect and the Ugwal sect, proving his strength. And now, the focus shifts to his current challenge, the Hoying sect. And he defeats the current opponent from the Hoying sect with a quick move, causing the man to cry out. And one of the sect members is sent flying across the room and crashes down hard, clearly defeated. And the defeated man groans, acknowledging his loss. And the actual, older Hoying sect leader then laughs heartily, greeting Seo Yoonhyun. And he acknowledges Seo Yoonhyun as the young first-rate martial artist who has been challenging duels around the city, and says he also learned much. And suddenly, a group of very muscular, intimidating elders steps forward, looking ready for a fight. And the old sect leader asks Seo Yoonhyun if he is ready to fight all 10 of them consecutively. And Seo Yoonhyun is surprised, asking if this is how unorthodox sects seek revenge after a duel has already ended with his victory. And the old sect leader just smiles widely and asks if he has heard of this practice now. And Co Yoon Hyun thinks this old man is being devious, noting that if he exposed this trick, the Hoin sect's reputation would be ruined. And the muscular elder cuts in, stating there is no problem with their plan. And the elder explains their method. Co Yoon Hyun will get a small scratch during the duel, which will be infected, causing him to fall ill. And the old sect leader confirms that they will give him great care during this supposed illness. And they plan for everyone to believe that despite their best efforts to treat him, Co Yoon Hyun unfortunately passed away. And the elders, now surrounding him with weapons, smugly state that a dead man cannot refute their story. And Co Yoon Hyun looks on with a slight grimace, realizing they are even crazier than he first thought.